Hi, everyone. Today's webinar is titled FDA Drug Topics, Advancing Transparency and Regulatory Science Activities on the Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategy, or REMS. My name is Kara Burke, a pharmacist and team leader in the Division of Drug Information. I would like to welcome you to this educational activity sponsored by the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, Office of Communications, Division of Drug Information. We thank you and appreciate your patience as we continue to offer these CE courses completely virtual. If you experience any technical difficulties, please email us at ddiwebinars@fda.hhs.gov for direct assistance. Thank you. Before I introduce our speakers, I have a few housekeeping remarks. All faculty are expected to use generic names. If trade names are used, those of several companies should be used rather than only that of a single supporting company. Unapproved use disclosure. CE faculty speakers are required to disclose to the attendees when products or procedures being discussed are off-label, unlabeled, not FDA approved, and any limitations on the information that is presented. Disclosure. The faculty's planning committee members and the FDA CE consultation and accreditation team have nothing to disclose. We hope you will enjoy meeting our presenters today. First, Dr. Ed Milliken is the Senior Informatics Pharmacist in the Office of Medication Error Prevention and Risk Management in the Office of Surveillance and Epidemiology with an FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. With over 20 years of experience as an informatics pharmacist, his background includes REMS integration, drug information database development, FDA REMS structured product labeling, healthcare terminologies such as SNOMED CT, and data standards such as HL7 FHIR, interoperability and coding. Dr. Milliken currently serves as a champion for the HL7 CodeX REMS integration use case and is a co-lead for the HL7 Vulcan Adverse Event Project. Dr. Milliken graduated magna cum laude from the Campbell University School of Pharmacy and completed a residency in drug information and pharmaceutical informatics at the University of California, San Francisco, and First Data Bank. Our second presenter, Dr. George Narapalli, works as a subject matter expert at the FDA in the Office of Surveillance and Epidemiology and the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research on regulatory science and policy initiatives and research. George also previously worked at MITRE, the Health Federally Funded Research and Development Center for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, as a Medicaid Pharmacy Director, and HHS at the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality and the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, as a Congressional Health Fellow in the U.S. Senate, and as a Drug Information and Safety Pharmacist. Dr. Narapalli received his BS in Finance from the University of Connecticut, his PharmD from the University of North Carolina, his MPH from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and his JD from the University of Maryland. And our third and final speaker is Dr. Geeta Torsarkani, is the Associate Director for Strategic Initiatives and Research in FDA's Office of Medication Error Prevention and Risk Management in the Office of Surveillance and Epidemiology with an FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. She has over 18 years of regulatory experience in pharmacovigilance and drug safety. She advises on pre- and post-market activities and policies involving risk management for products regulated by CDER. In her current role, she oversees research activities related to advancing the science of risk management, risk communication, and risk assessment. Her area of interest has been applying implementation science and use of theories and frameworks for designing, implementing, and evaluating REMS programs. Dr. Torsarkani received her PharmD from University of Maryland School of Pharmacy and her MBA from the University of Baltimore Merrick School of Business with a concentration in healthcare management. All right, now please give a warm online welcome to Dr. Ed Milliken, Dr. George Narapalli, and Dr. Geeta Torsarkani.
Thank you, Kara. Today, I'll be providing a high-level overview of the REMS structured product labeling, SPL, and how it pertains to the REMS integration project that we've been working on over the past 2 years. And my colleagues seen here, of course, George Narapalli, will provide an overview and update of the progress of the REMS integration project and Geeta Toysterkani will be discussing the RIMS public dashboard and its capabilities. And here we have our learning objectives for today and what we'll be covering. And so many of you know a RIMS may include different types of interventions, such as labs or certification to prescribe the drug. And these interventions are called elements to assure safe use, otherwise known as ATASU. And the goal of the ATASU are to mitigate risks associated with the use of the drug. So it's important to note that the approval of these drugs would not have occurred and may have been removed from the market without the RIMS. The lack of standardization, though, of the RIMS has led to significant challenges in implementing and evaluating RIMS effectiveness. So in general, RIMS implementation is a manual process, and it's not well integrated into prescriber or pharmacist workflows. And this can lead to delays in patients accessing RIMS drugs in a timely manner and suboptimal patient outcomes. So the lack of standardized data makes it difficult to share and integrate data and to get timely feedback. But use of data standards and contemporary health information technology can lead to a more automated and less burdensome RIMS ecosystem. And RIMS can be integrated in a clinician workflow. Patients would be able to complete their RIMS requirements through their patient EHR portal or via an app. And there would be higher quality standardized data for more timely feedback and robust evaluation. Due to reduced friction in exchanging RIMS data, patients could achieve more timely access to their safe use of their medication. So I want to point out two of the new guidances that are related to RIMS modernization that were published in January of this year. The RIMS document template has been removed from the format and content of a RIMS document guidance and placed into the new RIMS document technical conformance guide. Also, the new technical conformance guide adds an outline to assist applicants in drafting a bifurcated RIMS document. And so a bifurcated RIMS document is used when the approval of a shared system RIMS may coincide with the tentative approval of an ANDA. And the RIMS document technical conformance guide allows for easier updating of the RIMS document template with new information like RIMS requirements and other edits in a more timely manner. And the technical conformance guide also provides the foundation for structure and encoding of the SPL RIMS document. So I'll be discussing like FDA's modernization efforts to expand the use of structured product labeling for coding RIMS requirements, how the RIMS document and SPL work together, and the benefits of RIMS SPL, which lead to the update on the RIMS Integration, Innovation, and Modernization Project. But first, I'm going to provide a brief overview of what structured product labeling, or SPL, is. So if you think of the RIMS document as the face of RIMS, you could consider RIMS SPL to be sort of like the engine, where there are lots of parts and pieces that work together to potentially help implement the RIMS in a health IT system. And the RIMS document helps communicate the RIMS requirements for sponsors and stakeholders. So it's also the only regulatory document that captures the requirements for all applicable stakeholders. And the RIMS requirements are organized by stakeholder and timing. And so here we have the when, which is before treatment, the who, which are healthcare providers who prescribe, and then the what, which is that they must counsel the patient. So what is SPL? Well, again, it stands for Structured Product Labeling, and it's a markup language, similar to hypertext markup language, or HTML, that's used for displaying web pages. HTML has predefined tags that show the text on a web page as headers, paragraphs, bolded, italicized, and underlined text, and web browsers know how to display the content in these tags. So SPL is a data standard used to capture information about drug products like indications, dosage and administration, and side effects. But SPL can cover product information beyond prescribing information. So we're using SPL to structure and code the RIMS document, its sections, and the RIMS requirements. So similar to HTML, SPL has predefined tags that capture coded sections of content and more detailed product-specific information. SPL allows structuring and coding of text for easier computer processing. So SPL was developed by the HL7 Standard Organization, or Health Level 7. You may be more familiar with HL7 with relation to its creation and maintenance of the Internal Hospital and Health System Messaging Data Standard, also known as HL7 V2, and it allows transmission of information like hospital admissions, discharge, billing, and pharmacy orders. And so this is the RIMS Document Technical Conformance Guide template on the left, versus the RIMS document in SPL format on the right. And they look very similar. The title and major sections of content are pretty much the same. Here we have the administrative information, the RIMS goal, and RIMS requirements. The requirements section is what we will look more closely at to show the power of RIMS in SPL format. Within RIMS SPL sections, there is the content, but there are also unique codes that are assigned to each section of the RIMS, as you can see here. These codes make it easier for computers to find the RIMS sections and parse through the data for actionable information. There's a new field under the administrative information in the RIMS document. It's for the risks that the RIMS is designed to address. And this is a field in the RIMS SPL that will help us track these different risks as we receive more RIMS in SPL format. Here, we have the remaining RIMS SPL codes that are assigned to the other RIMS sections of the RIMS document. And I'll point out that the statutory elements section is new, and this information will help populate and update databases like the RIMS dashboard potentially in the future for help us tracking the RIMS elements in various ETASU. And as we discuss and we focus in on section 3, the RIMS requirements, I want to point out more of the power and coding that lies behind the requirements and how they can assist in clinical decision support and helping clinicians and stakeholders adhere to the RIMS. The RIMS requirements section contains all of the requirements directed to stakeholders other than the sponsor. This section provides an overview of what the specific stakeholders participating in the RIMS are required to do. And they're organized by stakeholder with a table listing who has to do what, when, and with what if necessary. And so the RIMS document template provides a very important framework to use because it provides consistency of language that also corresponds to the unique requirement codes in the RIMS SPL. So SPL captures, again, the major components of a RIMS via coding and structuring of the data, and there are 4 major W's that are captured, and they include these listed on the slide. So we have the who, or the responsible stakeholders, such as the prescriber or pharmacist, the when, or the protocol, like RIMS certification, the what, the RIMS requirement, like counseling a patient or lab testing, and finally, the with what, so the RIMS material, like an enrollment form or an educational guide. And as we look at the RIMS requirements and how they're organized in the PDF, this table helps set up the structure of a RIMS document in SPL. The first stakeholders in the template are the prescribers. So we use the stakeholder element here, pointing to the healthcare providers who prescribe. And so an element is basically a container with a beginning tag that's used before the content is describing, and then ends with another tag to end the content. And a computer is able to then identify the stakeholder and link the upcoming timing, protocol, and requirement with the prescriber, along with the document reference, if needed. SPL promotes the design and structuring of the standardized RIMS document. It allows for clearly defined format and development of consistent RIMS documents, and consistently designed RIMS documents allow for faster review and tracking. A standardized format and design of RIMS documents allow for development of a central repository for tracking, updating, and comparing RIMS documents. SPL also sets the stage for standardized RIMS tools to be developed for maintaining and implementing RIMS. SPL makes RIMS data more accessible and available. The RIMS information is no longer statically trapped in an unstructured PDF document. And this diagram shows how SPL data, including RIMS SPL, is submitted by the sponsor to FDA and then passed along to the NLM into DailyMed, and as a downloadable zip file that can be incorporated by health IT vendors into clinical decision support systems to assist healthcare providers and pharmacists provide improved patient care. And guidance for providing RIMS SPL submissions in electronic format was published in December of 2020. The details of providing submissions of RIMS and SPL is located in the guidance, and sponsors are required to submit the RIMS document in SPL format using the FDA Automated Drug Registration and Listing System, otherwise known as eList, as soon as possible, but no later than 14 days from the date of the approval letter or RIMS modification approval letter. And so right now, again, sponsors are required to submit new and modified RIMS in SPL format, and RIMS and SPL must remain in RIMS SPL format. And as more RIMS SPL files are available, the complete data set will become more useful to stakeholders in healthcare systems. So RIMS SPL will help make information about RIMS drugs and RIMS requirements accessible. This can lead to better adherence to the RIMS requirements and collection of data that could lead to better RIMS assessment data for RIMS evaluation. And the RIMS document is the only component of a RIMS that's to be submitted in SPL format. So RIMS materials, typically accompanying PDFs referenced in the SPL file, are not required to be submitted in SPL format, but will be referenced and linked to within the RIMS SPL file. Again, the SPL files are being made available through the National Library of Medicine's DailyMed website. The RIMS SPL contain a related link that connects the RIMS document to the corresponding SPL containing the prescriber information and identifiers like the National Drug Code or NDC that can be linked into pharmacy information systems at the point of dispensing. And this allows third-party drug information providers and healthcare systems to download the RIMS SPL files and incorporate the RIMS information into their databases. RIMS SPL provides triggers based upon the coding in the file for specific stakeholders to perform specific tasks while providing clinical care. And so aggregating all of the RIMS SPL files also allows for more current RIMS information via automated updating and tracking of drug safety information from a central location. And so as of November 9th, we have a total of 22 approved RIMS SPLs publicly available. There are 5 shared system RIMS and 17 are single product RIMS available at the NLM DailyMed RIMS and RIMS indexing files download page that's located here. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over to my colleague, Dr. George Nirpally, who will be giving a brief background and overview of the next steps for the RIMS SPL can feed into as he discusses the RIMS Integration, Innovation, and Modernization Project.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ed. So I'm George. I'm first going to give you a little bit of background and some definitions because some of the terminology may not be familiar. And then I'm going to talk about the RIMS integration use case. So as you can see here, HL7 or Health Level 7, that's a standards development organization that we're currently working with on the RIMS integration use case. HL7 FHIR or Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources is a data exchange standard that we're testing for use to integrate REMS into workflow and into the healthcare delivery system. M-code stands for Minimal Common Oncology Data Elements, and it's a cancer FHIR-based data standard. HL7 FHIR accelerators are collaborative initiatives that focus on solving for particular health problems using this FHIR data standard, and we're working with one of these on the REMS integration use case, which is Codex, which is a FHIR accelerator that's focused on building a community around FHIR and related data standards to solve for problems through stakeholder-driven use cases. FHIR, a little bit more about FHIR, some of you may not be familiar with this, is that it's a health data exchange standard. It's free to use, so that's one of the benefits of this standard. It also is based on modern web-based technology. So for instance, if you're using an app on your phone, that's connecting to the internet and enabling you to exchange data through what are called application programming interfaces or APIs. And FHIR works in a similar manner. It splits health data into what are called resources. So you can think of them as components. For example, there's a resource on the patient, which includes demographic data elements. There's a number of resources on medication, obviously with the different attributes of a medication that may be prescribed and used. And there's a resource on observation for lab results, et cetera. So there's a number, it's about 140 to 50 resources in the current version of FHIR. Here is just a snapshot of this REMS integration use case. Before I walk through this, I just want to mention that we at the FDA have had a contract with the MITRE Corporation, which is a nonprofit organization, to develop a proof of concept prototype for REMS integration into the healthcare system. And we're focusing on the prescriber side, which is on the left where you see providers. And then there will be building in the pharmacy piece so we can come up with a complete solution to reduce some of those burdens that Ed mentioned earlier and to ideally get better data for feedback and evaluation. So on the left, when you're a prescriber going to prescribe the medication, you want to find out what those REMS requirements are and be able to complete them within your workflow, ideally, to reduce burden. And so if you click once, we're looking to use the FHIR data standard at this stage so you can automatically in workflow get the information once you've selected a REMS drug about what requirements need to be met. And I'll show a few screenshots later to give an example of this with the demo of the prototype. And then if you click through again, we're working and we will be working in the upcoming months to build in the NCPDP script standard that many of you are familiar with on this call to incorporate the pharmacy piece as well so we can come up with a holistic solution for REMS integration into both prescriber and pharmacy workflow, building in the patient and ensuring that they get timely and safe access to their medications. So I had mentioned that we're working with the Codex FHIR Accelerator. What is that? Well, it's really a group of organizations, and I'll have a slide coming up on who's participating in this or some of the organizations. But what they do is they come up with developing modeling using this FHIR standard that I mentioned to solve for a particular healthcare problem. So what does that mean? So for example, they create implementation guides, which are kind of instruction manuals on how to use this data standard for particular data exchanges, whether it's REMS integration or for a number of other use cases, such as registry reporting or patient clinical trial matching or many others, to be able to reduce burden and increase the efficiency of sharing health data for a variety of purposes. Here you can see that with this Accelerator Codex, as well as with a number of the others, there are a broad swath of organizations, which is one of the strengths of working with an accelerator. You can see we at the FDA have joined this community of stakeholders, and there are a number of health systems, health information technology companies, government agencies, pharmaceutical companies, and many, many others here. So that's one strength. And the work is generally open and available to the public, and people are welcome to join. And we'll have more information about that on this REMS integration work. This is just a slide to depict that we really need to use both of these standards that I've mentioned, the HL7 FHIR standard on the EHR medical data side and the NCPDP script standard on the pharmacy and e-prescribing side, because we need data on both of these in order to support REMS implementation and integration. So for example, on the EHR data side, it would be things like lab monitoring that are required for certain REMS. So this is just a little more information about the use case in the project. We have monthly public use case calls, and really this is open to anyone. So if you're interested in learning more, participating, we really encourage you to call into the upcoming call this week, or if not, there'll be another one coming up in approximately the next month or so. We also have regular prototypes. I had mentioned that we're working with the MITRE Corporation at the FDA. And they are working with the group of stakeholders in the community that work to implement REMS and work on REMS. And they regularly release updates to this prototype based on feedback from the community, so we can make sure this is something that is useful. There's going to be the initial testing with synthetic data coming up in January of next year. And so just coming up within a month or two, and that's going to test the prescriber side of the diagram that I had previously shown. And that will give us an idea with synthetic data only, just to test the data flows. And then the next step will be to build in the pharmacy community. So if anyone is interested on this call in learning more and joining, this is a very opportune time to consider doing so. So I think the emphasis, it's an open project, and we really encourage others to join. We did have a public workshop about a year ago, and we got a lot of really good feedback. It was well attended. We had participation from health systems, pharmacists and pharmacy groups, from patients on REMS medications, and others. Got a lot of helpful feedback and general support for the initiative. Here you can see, and on some of the upcoming slides, you will see some companies and drug names. Just to point out, these are just some of the participants in the pilots, but this is really a solution being designed for all REMS drugs and different companies to use, as well as the other stakeholders, the health professionals, pharmacists, and prescribers. So this is just some of the initial work being done with the piloting, but the idea is this will be a solution if it is developed and we have the uptake that we hope for, can work for all REMS programs and products. So there's a BMS product, mavacamten, and that will be tested out with a health information technology company, InfoWorks. This is at the January 2024 Connectathon. It's an HL7. Again, that's a standards development organization setting. It's a virtual setting, and it is open to the public as well. There is a fee to attend it, but that will test out some of these data flows. You see that there's FHIR there. There are also two other related HL7 standards. I'm not going to go into them, CDS-HOOKS and SmartApp, but that really has to do with getting the REMS information within your workflow and completing the requirements. And I'll show a couple screenshots on the prescriber side in a minute of what that looks like. The other is another product, tolvaptan, involves the sponsor as well as one of the major REMS administrators, UBC, and again, using some related HL7 technology. So we're trying to use these open standards to the extent that we can, so that way these can be scalable solutions that can be ultimately, hopefully, used by all in the future if we're successful. So you're going to see a few screenshots in the upcoming slides. These are from the demos of the prototype that I mentioned. These medications are just for purposes of example. So this is just a mock-up from the demo of you are a prescriber and you're selecting medication. What we're trying to do is within this workflow as the prescriber, you can automatically get these requirements once you select that medication or take a certain step. Cards will be returned with the links that you can either open up an app and get these requirements within your workflow. The beauty of this is you don't have to step outside to a separate portal or do other manual processes as you do now for the staff or the prescriber that's doing this. This can reduce a lot of burden. There are some parallels to what's going on with electronic prior authorization in that realm to try to do some of these same things. And we're trying to leverage some of those same technologies and standards here because the health systems have to do all of this. And so it's helpful to them, but it's also better for the whole ecosystem to take these approaches using standards. So that is the step that you'll be able to do first, is to find out if there are REMS and what the requirements are. You'll be able to open up the forms within the workflow. And these are screenshots again from demos. The links are available. It's all open to the public if you want to see recordings of the demos and see where we're at and what it looks like, or if you're interested in joining to build on this work that's been going on. Here you'll see that this is familiar to many of you. It's just may look in a little different format because this would be an electronic form within the prescriber workflow to fill out the requirements for patient enrollment as an example. Here is an example of one of the powerful aspects of using FHIR for this purpose is that you can auto-populate a lot of this information. You see demographics can be pulled in. I had mentioned the patient resource. That's where that would come from some of that. And then there are also their labs, as you can see here. For some of the REMS, as you all know, you need particular lab monitoring information. This can reduce burden by auto pulling the information that's already in the EHR that can then be checked and verified and can be used. On the back end, it can also help us with better standardized data for feedback and evaluation of the REMS programs in the future. So this is just one example of that with this particular REMS. And what we're looking to work on in the future, so in a sense, your attendance is really opportune, is the ability to build in the pharmacy side, which using NCPDP script and connecting to the FHIR standard for purposes of completing pharmacy REMS requirements and pharmacist REMS requirements, but also verifying that all requirements have been met, ideally within the pharmacy workflow. So that way you can easily check and make sure everything is completed in an updated manner, and make sure that any follow-ups need to be done and that anything you need to do has been completed so the patient can get more timely access to their medication. Ideally, in the future, patients could get some idea about this and access to what's going on as well so they can do their follow-ups and it's not just totally a black box for them. This is a similar problem, obviously, with prior authorization as well, but we're focused on the REMS integration for this use case. And this is a slide that just depicts the collaborations that are going on between the two standards development organizations, NCPDP, and I mentioned the script data standard, and HL7, which relates with the FHIR and other data standards. And you see in the upper left, the REMS, that relates to the REMS integration use case. And we have been able to foster these kind of collaborations across these two organizations with our REMS integration use case that, as you can see here, can lead to and is fostering additional collaborations around a number of other important areas in the healthcare system, such as value-based arrangements, electronic prior auth, and other areas. So we are focused on REMS integration and we're making good progress, and we hope you'll join us in this. But this could have other benefits as well, where you need both pharmacy and medical EHR data. And so we're almost the last slide of this part of the presentation. We really encourage you to get involved. If you go to the website to learn more information, that would be a good first step. Feel free to reach out to any of us. We're always happy to engage and answer any questions. And again, the public use case calls are a good place to get even more information and to engage on this if you're interested. And then finally, these are just some resources with the links if you're interested in more information. And this is my last slide, so I'll now pass it on to Geeta for the next part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Depending on where you are, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I will be discussing FDA's REMS public dashboard and will provide a brief demo of the dashboard at the end. Similar to the integration and REMS SPL efforts just discussed, the development of the dashboard was also part of an effort to advance transparency related to REMS regulatory activities. Interestingly enough, the idea of dashboards initially came from the car industry, where one could see information related to their car and performance. However, the use of dashboards has become more common in the healthcare industry. Especially during the pandemic, there was a proliferation of dashboards to track COVID infections and outcomes. Dashboards are helpful really to see what has been happening more broadly and also be able to drill down. This quote that says no one ever made a decision because of a number, they need a story, really resonates with the use of dashboards. And perhaps this is a change in how we communicate information and the need for the data to read more as a story. So what is the REMS public dashboard? It is an interactive web-based tool that allows for visualization and analysis of REMS data. The information on the dashboard is coming from publicly available REMS data files, which are found on the REMS.FDA website. The dashboard can combine any number of data sources. It can be customized and is interactive. The dashboard uses ClickSense application, which is also currently used for the FDA Adverse Event Reporting System, or also known as the FAERS Public Dashboard. The REMS Public Dashboard was launched on December 17th, 2021, so it's been around for a couple of years now. And on the slide, there is a direct link to the dashboard for those who are interested in accessing it from the slides. So since the implementation of REMS authorities in 2008, REMS data has really accumulated over time. We have over 300 REMS approved, and we have more than 700 REMS modifications. So the need to visualize all data at a glance and be able to drill down was part of the motivation to build a dashboard. Another motivation for developing the dashboard was that REMS FDA Excel files that are publicly available are not easy to read and analyze. Internally, the data had to be manually processed and aggregated, and sometimes this had to be done on a quarterly or monthly basis. And externally, we realized based on the questions we were receiving that the data files were also being misinterpreted. So that was part of the motivation for developing the REMS public dashboard. The dashboard improves data access and transparency, and we hope that it will increase awareness and understanding of REMS program and allow for quick visualization of the data in an interactive way. And it also provides the ability to export graphs and tables and allow for information for informed decision making. As anything, the dashboard has its limitations. The data in the REMS dashboard are currently limited to the information in the data files on the REMS.FDA website. Therefore, the result of the data retrieved is limited and dependent on the accuracy of these data files. And the dashboard is really intended for descriptive analysis only. This slide is just to illustrate where on the REMS.FDA website you can find the link to the dashboard as well as the data files. So here you have the direct link from the REMS.FDA to the dashboard itself. And then next to it, if anyone's interested in the actual data files, they can also be accessed here. This slide is just to illustrate a little bit more in detail the relationship of those 4 current data files that I was referring to that can be found on REMS.FDA website. They can also be individually downloaded. However, on the right side, we're just depicting, and I don't expect anyone to read this, but there's a lot of zeros and ones, and the information really, in order to understand it, you have to link all of these files together. And so that's what the dashboard is doing. It's pulling the information together to provide a story that we need for it to tell. In terms of the organization, the dashboard has 8 pages or tabs or views, if you will. Each page represents different information. So we have broken it up to a page on all REMS ever approved. The next page focuses only on REMS that are currently active. The next page is on REMS with elements to assure safe use or ETASUs. We have a page dedicated to shared system REMS, REMS modifications, revisions, released REMS, and finally there's a REMS summary page And we are exploring other data sources to further expand the data analysis capabilities of the dashboard, such as adding risk information and assessment information in the future. Here are some basic REMS dashboard queries that one can perform. These are really basic, such as the number of REMS approved by the year, or perhaps the number of modifications stratified by year, how many REMS have been released can be found on the dashboard, number of REMS approved for, let's say, BLAs versus NDAs, how many times the REMS has been modified, and then, which REMS have been released in a given year. So this is just a snapshot of the dashboard itself, or the landing page of the dashboard. And just to point out a few main features at the top, these are the pages that I was referring to, and you can click on any of these to get more specific information. Then on the right top, you have a user manual, an FAQ, and then a link to site feedback, which we would really appreciate if you have any suggestions or comments. You can, on the dashboard itself, you can provide here. The numbers at the top, or some dashboards refer to them as key performance indicators. And in this case, these are just counts of the number of programs. In the middle, depending on the selection that the user selects, there might be a number showing you the user selection. And then typically on the right side, we have a drop-down selection to stratify the data into various other, stratify them further. Most of the pages are structured similarly in that there is a graph on the left side and a corresponding table on the right side. And then at the bottom, there is the last data refresh date. So you know how current the information on the dashboard is. So this slide is just to illustrate the different pages and views to give you a feel for it. So for example, on the top left graph, we have selected all REMS stratified by application type. The right top information is now being viewed by REMS elements. The bottom left is only looking at shared system approved by year. And then the bottom right graph is showing the dynamic nature of REMS and shows the cumulative REMS approved and released over time. I just wanted to point out the FAQ page that might help with some of the basic questions that you might have. So the FAQ page that can be accessed from the dashboard has a section on general questions as well as technical questions. And then two new features that I wanted to point out since the launch in 2021, for those that may have been using the dashboard. The data refresh is now automated and is being updated weekly instead of monthly. And we have added hyperlinks on the active REMS page for direct access to REMS materials. And then I just wanted to point out some basic user interfaces. Overall, the application is fairly straightforward once you start using it. As I mentioned, you have a navigation blue bar at the top, and you can select either single or multiple values, and you can click and drag graphs to select. All tables have filter panes to search. We usually recommend full screen for better view. And for data export, we recommend using the tables instead of the graph, but you have the option to export from either one. And also when you move from one page to the next, and I'll show you this in the demo shortly, the selections gets reset. So something to be aware of. So now I'm gonna switch over and just quickly walk you and point a few things out on the dashboard and maybe just show you some of the queries that I just mentioned. There are two ways, or there are multiple ways actually to get to the dashboard. You can either access it by going to the REMS page on FDA website. And then on the left side, you can click on the dashboard. And so this will take you, and you can click on this and this will take you to the REMS public dashboard. Or if you are on the REMS.FDA page that I've mentioned also a few times, you can click on it via this link. So I'm just going to use this right now for the purpose of the demo. And so typically when you open it up, you will have to accept this disclaimer. So I'm going to go ahead and accept it. And this is going to be always the landing page that you will land on. As I mentioned, these are the blue page, the blue bar where the pages are. You have the user manual, FAQ, site feedback, and then your drop down. And so, for example, we're on the page where we're looking at all total REMS ever approved. So there are 311, right, that have been ever approved. Currently, there's 66 that are active. So let's say I'm interested in year 2023 to see which REMS were approved in 2023. And so on the table on the right side, you'll see the corresponding products with the application numbers, as well as the elements within there that you can even sort and stratify within the table. And let's say I want to look at this drop down and select by application type. So I can see within 2023, there were 10 REMS that were approved. And of those, 2 are ANDAs, 2 are BLAs, and 6 remainder are NDAs. If we go to the active REMS page, again, like I said, it's a similar look and feel. We can look at all the active REMS by elements this time. So I'm curious to see what elements these REMS are approved. And as we can see from the label here with the blue bar, the majority of the REMS that are approved currently active are ETASU REMS. We have some that are a MedGuide or a MedGuide CP only, but predominantly the ones that are active are currently ETASU REMS. If I go to the shared system REMS, we can see that there are 23 shared REMS. Of those, 18 are currently active. The modification page, similarly, we can look at that. We can look at the number of modified in, again, 2023, for example. And let's say we're interested to see how many modifications were just for shared system REMS out of the 31. And so we can see that 7 of those modifications in 2023 were for shared system REMS. I'm going to move to the REMS release page. These are the number of REMS that were released per year. We can look at them by elements. So we can see that 138 MedGuide only REMS were released. And you can see the remainder. We can also look at this by quarterly if we're interested, or monthly. And like I said, you can left click and there's the ability to transport the data or download the data, as well as also take a snapshot of the images on the dashboard. So with that, I'm going to now conclude the demo.
We have about 6 minutes, so hopefully we can get in a couple good questions from the audience. The first one coming in, going to Ed and George. Where can we find the REMS SPL files to download?
You can actually find them at the NLM Daily Med website. You could actually Google that, NLM Daily Med, and on the initial screen that comes up, there's actually a link to the NLM SPL resources. And just under that header, there's a link to the all indexing and REMS files link.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, and I believe this one goes to Geeta. Coming in from the audience, does the REMS dashboard include information on the risk being mitigated in programs? For example, can it be queried to show all REMS programs being approved for teratogenic risk?
That's a great question. So currently we don't have the risk information in there, but that is actually something that we're looking into adding as an element to the dashboard.
Thanks so much, Geeta. Okay. Next question. Which REMS documents due to be submitted in SPL format?
Sure, this is Ed. I can take that. So basically all REMS documents that are new, so new REMS, the REMS that have a modification, and then REMS that are already in SPL format, all of those will need to be submitted in the FDA SPL format at this time.
Next question. Will the REMS at FDA continue to serve as the source of data for the REMS public dashboard?
Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, I can take that one. So yeah, it is the main source of the data and it's used to update the dashboard. It will continue to be the data source for updating. But as I mentioned, we're looking to supplementing that information with other data sources as well.
How do I participate in the REMS integration use case? I think that's to Ed or George.
Yes, hey, this is George. Happy to take that one. So as I mentioned during the presentation, REMS integration is open to the public and for those to participate. And we have an upcoming public call. You can feel free to shoot us an email as well if you have questions. We've provided that as well as the links in the slides that will be available. Thanks.
Thanks so much, George. Okay, next question coming in. I think this one should go to Geeta. Are all the ETASU components included in the dashboard?
So right now, It currently has divided it by prescriber certification, dispenser certification, and patient enrollment information, which is what can be found on the dashboard. However, all of these initiatives that George, Ed, and I were presenting on today are somewhat obviously interrelated, and the information that's going to be included in the REMS document, for example, Ed had mentioned that they're now capturing the ETASU, that'll help populate and will also help populate the dashboard and to expand, including all of the 6 ETASU elements. So currently they're not there, but like I said, we plan on including those as well.
Okay, the next one, I think we have time for a couple more. When will the REMS integration prototype be tested?
Yes, George, great question. Happy to take this one. So as I mentioned in the presentation, the first initial testing with synthetic data of the prototype is going to be at an HL7 Connectathon in January of 2024. So coming up in a few months, and please follow up with us if you have further interest in participating. Thank you.
Can you go over what is the shared REMS page again?
Sure. So the shared REMS page, basically it covers those programs that are part of a shared system. So in order to reduce the burden of maintaining multiple REMS for multiple products on the same class of products, FDA usually encourages a single REMS system referred to as a shared system. So that page includes those programs that are part of a shared system. And so those are the ones that multiple sponsors might be working together and have a joint program.
Looks like we can take one more question. So the last question let's take is, who is participating in the REMS integration use case?
Okay, it's George. Great question. Happy to take that. So as mentioned during the presentation, there have been a number of different stakeholders and organizations that have engaged and participated on the public calls, from health systems to prescribers, pharmacies, REMS administrators, pharmaceutical companies, health information technology companies, with the FDA and others. Some of those stakeholders are working on the initial piloting using synthetic data that was mentioned. That's coming up in January. And if those are interested, as mentioned, please follow up with us. We have the contact information and go to the webpage for more information and participate in public calls. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think this one is an important one too, so we'll squeeze this one in. I can actually say it because our division gets this question a lot. How often is the REMS dashboard updated? So the dashboard is actually updated weekly. So squeezing that last question in, which is a good question. All right, thank you so much. If you have questions, please email them to our Division of Drug Information email address at druginfo@fda.hhs.gov for assistance. If you need more CEs for your license renewals this year, please check out our list of home study CE webinars on our homepage, www.fda.gov/DDI webinars. We have 5 QR codes on the slide in front of you that are easy to access. There's a QR code for X, the Drug Information Listserv, our continuing education webpage, our podcast, our Gaddis LinkedIn group, and our fellowship program. Please scan these QR codes for more information and for CE opportunities. You may also find additional free CE credits, such as the FDA's drug regulation course titled FDA's Role in Public Health, Drug Efficacy, Safety, Quality, and Beyond on our CDER Learn website by entering CDER Learn in the search engine on fda.gov. This concludes our activity for today. The FDA appreciates your participation in this webinar, and we hope that you will join us again in the future. Thanks so much, everyone.